Okay, this is on to part 2 to working with the basic sculpting set. I'm going to do a little bit more refinement. And let's start with clip R, which is the knife clip. And as you can tell, if you actually need to remove clay instead of just move it from one area to the other, this knife tip is really good for that. If you find your clay drags, then you can moisten the tip of your tool, and this will cut back on some of the drag. Okay, now that I've removed some, I'm going to take the B tip and I'm going to smooth the area that I removed the clay from. An X-Acto blade or a scalpel will remove clay cleaner, and you'll have less work to do to clean up the area afterwards. But if you use metal, you have to be extremely careful that there are no oils on the metal, no previous rust, etc. Because if you're working with flesh-colored clay and it's going to be a one-off doll, the oils on it, on the metal, can permanently color your clay, and you'll end up having to paint it afterwards instead of leaving it the natural flesh color, which is the reason the wooden tools were created to begin with, to avoid all that nonsense. Okay, the other use for the knife tool in particular is the creation of hands. I'm going to warm up my clay here. And I'm going to squeeze out an elongated rectangle. It helps if you leave the tip kind of rounded. That makes it easier to make your fingers different sizes. Now I'm going to take the R tip. Okay, let's go on to make a hand. We take our knife tool, make an indentation between each of the fingers. I'm not going all the way through on this first path. I'm going to take the tool and I'm going to slice off the excess from each finger. So my fingers are now of a different length. And use my thumb and forefinger to smooth the ends. If preferred, I can also use the end tip to help smush the clay where I want it to go. And what I'm doing here, because I want this to be a curved form, I'm allowing the inside of the tool, which is a curved edge, to go along the top of each finger to gently curve it towards the crease. Now this is a beginner's hand. I'm not going to separate the fingers all the way. If I get it too elongated at the tip, if the clay stretches, I can use the same tool head to round it up and over. This will kind of fold it back on itself So if the tip has gotten dragged and too thin, you have a way of controlling that. Now I always work from the little finger in, because as you go from one finger to the next, it's very easy to distort the fingers next to it. So it's just kind of easier to do them all in a row like this. I am moistening the tip to cut down on drag. Now this is just a quick study in clay. I'm not going to go whole hog with it because I usually spend an hour to 2 hours on each hand. And I just want to do an indication here. Now if you have the doll making set of tools, you will have individual fingernail makers, which are scaled for each finger. If you just bought the basic set, then your best tool head to use for this purpose would be the L shape. Notice the L shape is kind of a shovel. If you take it and you depress it along the top of each finger and rotate from each side in, you can get a nail bed. The doll making tools are easier because the scoops come in different sizes and you can just make a top impression on top of the finger. You don't have to try to make one tool be a one-size-fit-all scenario. So while this can be done, I will admit it's easier to use the multi-sized tool heads so that you're not fighting to do a smaller task with a larger tool. But there you go. You can see the two nail heads being formed. And then if you want to add creases and folds, I'm using the N-shaped tool. I'm making an indentation right above where the joint is. I'm going to make another slight indentation where the fingers join the back of the hand. And I'm going to use the knife blade to gently add a few lines. And as you get to the center joint, look at the back of your hand and you'll see how the lines are curved. So as you impress the lines, you want to try to rotate the hand into the tool so you get a nice curved effect. Now what I like to do, I like to impress the lines, the larger lines, while the clay is in the moist shape. And then afterwards, if it's polymer after I've cooked it, or if it's water-based clay after it's dried out, I'll take a sewing needle and go in and etch the finer lines to give more emphasis to the hand.